How should you use categories and tags on your WordPress website? It's a default feature that just sits there, but how you make use of this makes a huge difference to how navigatable and user-friendly and also how SEO-friendly your website ends up being. So in this video, we'll take a close look at exactly how to categorize your website and how to use tags. This is great if you're starting out and you're building a website. This is a great way to start setting your categories. But if you already have a website and you watch this video and you think, oh, there's some things I have to change, stick around to the end because I've got an important bonus for you there as well. I'm Shane Malach from Thrive Themes, and to get started on this topic, let's first look at what categories and tags are about and what they do. And at its most basic, a category or a tag in WordPress basically is the same thing. It joins together posts under a group. So if you have multiple posts with a category or with a tag, there is automatically an index page or an archive page that lists all of those posts. Typically, you might have seen it like this. You're on a blog and you'll see a blog post and it tells you what category this blog post is published in. And if we click on this, in this case called case studies, then we go to a category page for case studies in which instead of seeing all blog posts, we see only blog posts filed under the same category. And the same is basically true for tags. Now what this does, and some of the benefits of this is, first of all, it makes your site more navigatable. So if I come to this website and I'm interested in case studies, I don't have to look through the entire blog to try and find the posts I'm interested in. I can go to the category page and it shows me more relevant stuff to my interests. At the same time, this also has an SEO benefit because it means that all of these posts are automatically interlinked. So all of these posts are together on this one page that links out to all of them, and every post has this little case studies, in this case, link that links them to this page, right? So this is sometimes also referred to as a silo structure, but that's a basic benefit for SEO, is that you have thematically, logically linked together, automatically interlinked posts. The similarities between categories and tags end there. And one of the things that sets them apart is that categories are nestable. That means that if we look at in the admin area here in WordPress, the categories list, you can see that we have top level categories and subcategories in this case. Here's how that works. If we have the entertainment top level category and it has film, music and sports underneath it, if I view the sports category, the subcategory of sports in this case, we see only those posts listed that are related to sports. Makes sense, right? Importantly, if I view the entertainment, the top level category, what that means is that any post that was posted directly in the top level entertainment category, but also any post that was posted in any of its subcategories is listed on this page. So that's the important function, or that's something you need to know about how nested categories function, right? The top level category displays all posts of everything that is assigned to itself and to all of its subcategories. Tags, on the other hand, are not nestable. But having said that, as we'll get to right now, you probably shouldn't have lots and lots of nested and complicated category structures. So how many categories should you have and how should you categorize your website? Well, the first rule is a very simple one. Avoid orphans. That means you should never have a category that has only one post in it, because technically that just doesn't make any sense anymore. Since the category is all about grouping content, if your visitor comes along, they click on a category and they see only one post listed, then that is pointless. It is also pointless from a technical standpoint. There's no point in having a group of one. Now, in the same sense, I would count anything that has just a low post count as an orphan as well. Because again, if I'm a visitor, I'm coming to your website, I see a category I'm interested in, I click on it. If I see only 3 or 5 posts or something, that's not really in line with what I was hoping to find, because what the visitor probably wants to do is they want to browse, right? They want to see what else do you have in this category. And if that's a small number of things, then that's a bit pointless. In other words, it's much better to have fewer categories with a lot of content each than a lot of categories with very little content each. So rule number 2 is go for fewer categories. Really the only exception here is a magazine style website. a website where basically you publish dozens of articles a day, a news style website where you have many categories, and there it starts making sense to have a lot of categories and subcategories and so on. But for the vast majority of websites, for any kind of website that publishes one post per day or less, go for fewer and clearer categories. And that brings us to rule number 3, which is you should have clearly distinct categories in whatever your narrow niche is. For example, if you have a website, let's say about photography gear, and you have a category called news and another one called rumors, those two are not distinct enough, because basically, as a visitor, if I'm coming to the website and I want to learn about the latest upcoming camera gear, which one do I click? Is it news or rumors? Basically, no matter which one I click, I want the same thing. I want to learn the latest upcoming stuff. So your categories should be more distinct so that a visitor never sees two labels and goes, well, I don't know which one of these to choose. As another example, let's say we have a website and it has one category that is productivity for students and another one that is productivity at work. Here, these two are clearly distinct from each other, but the problem is a different one. This website is probably trying to appeal to too many people, to too many different groups of people all at the same time. If you are a student, you're probably not going to be attracted to a website that has a lot of content about, productivity at work or in the corporate world or something, and vice versa. So there, it probably makes more sense to narrow the topic of the entire website and make your distinctions between categories within that narrow niche. So in this case, maybe we narrow down to this is just about productivity for students, and we'd have one category that is for reading retention, and another category is for writing, so efficient writing or academic writing or something. So this is a good example because both of these categories sit in the same narrow niche. They both appeal to students, and they are also clearly distinct from each other. One of them is about learning from what you read. The other is about the writing work that you do. Part 2, how to name your categories. The typical mistake we see here is that we have very generic, often one-word category labels, and I would avoid that. Instead, go for labels that are action-oriented and point towards a desired outcome. So for example, instead of having a category called lead generation, have the category named build your mailing list. So that is an action, and it's something that the reader wants. I want to build my mailing list, so I click here. Same thing, generic label would be traffic or maybe traffic generation. And an action label that is much more personal and much more enticing would be get more visitors or build your audience. Using category labels like this is also a great way to inject your personality and give it your own voice, which is one of the things that makes your website stand out and makes people identify with it. So let's say in the fitness niche, typical generic label would be muscle building. And instead you might want to call that get pumped. And the typical generic label would be weight loss. And instead you might want to call that get shredded. So what that does is it gives you a bit of personality, and it also appeals more precisely to a specific group of people. If you're thinking about SEO here, then my advice is not to worry about that, because you're not going to rank for the generic terms anyway. You're not going to rank for muscle building or something like that. So it's much better to have like a brandable term that people can identify with. And whatever you choose, make sure that the people you target completely understand what a category label is about when they see it in isolation. So if someone sees only that category label, they should know what to expect. So again, with my fitness niche example, it depends what kind of person, like what sub-niche in the fitness industry you are in. Because for a certain group of people, those labels, get pumped and get shredded, absolutely make sense in isolation. But for other groups of people, that would not be the right wording. How to apply categories. The rule here is really, really simple. When you create a post, put it in one category. That's it. Never put a post in more than one category. Then it starts diluting the structure of your site, makes it more difficult for people to find what they want, makes navigation more difficult, basically defeats the purpose of categories. So use the simple rule, every post is in one category, no more and no less. Now, if you followed the advice previously and you have only a small number of categories, what will happen inevitably is that you write a post and you look at it and you go, well, this doesn't fit perfectly into any of my categories. Doesn't matter, just put it in whatever category is the closest fit. Because again, it's much better to have a small number of clearly defined categories and a lot of content in each than to have a new category for this one post and someone clicks through to it, they don't find anything new. If you're writing something and you think, well, maybe this should be its own category, maybe at some point in the future, I'll have enough content for this to be its own category, just apply a tag. Apply a tag, and once you have 5 to 10 posts in that tag and you know you're going to create more, then you can turn it into a category of its own. How to add categories to your navigation. So as we said, one of the purposes of categories is to make your site easier to navigate. So how do you display them on your site? Well, here's what you shouldn't do. If you have your website and you have in your main navigation, you probably have a blog link. What you shouldn't do is have a drop down here that offers the different categories. In general, more menu items and more drop downs are a bad idea. So that's what I wouldn't do. Pretty much any theme you'll ever use, what it will automatically do is from your blog posts, it will link to the categories. So here, for example, this is the category. It will always have this post meta, which is usually the publish date, the author name, the categories, and then maybe number of comments. In some cases, it will also list tags, but if it does that, you should make it stop listing tags, and I'll get to that later. So through the post meta, your categories are already reachable. Also, if we go into a post, most themes have a form of breadcrumbs, and here again, the category should be listed in your breadcrumbs. So that's another way in which people can reach your categories. A very typical place for categories are widgets. So in WP Admin, if you go to Appearance and Widgets, you have a categories widget right here. And you can place the category widget in a widget area, such as the sidebar of your blog, and that's a pretty typical place to put it. And that again makes the categories easy to find and navigate to. Then another way in which categories often help with navigation is if you have some kind of a related posts widget, such as this here, that's usually created by the theme or maybe by a separate plugin. This will usually look to the categories to decide what posts to list here. And again, the visitor here doesn't actually think in terms of, oh, I'm going to go to this category or this category page or whatever, but it's just going to automatically show your visitors some posts that are likely something they're interested in since they've just read a post in that same category. Finally, you should link to category pages manually whenever that makes sense. So in your content, that is one of the linking opportunities if you mention something where it makes sense to have an internal link that helps people find the category page where they can browse for more. So what about tags then? This finally brings us to tags. Now, what should you use tags for? There are a few uses. One of them is just for internal organization. For example, one of the things I do is any post that contains a video, I add a video tag to that post. And that is just useful if I ever need to have an overview of every post that contains video. There's a tag page I can go to for that. One of the most important uses of tags for me is for targeting. So, for example, I use Thrive Leads, and there are targeting rules in Thrive Leads that determine where this form show up. And I have, for example, a no opt-in tag, where I simply have a rule that says, if the no opt-in tag is present, don't show the form. And that I apply that to every form. So if I ever have a post where I know I don't want an opt-in form to show here, maybe there's a content upgrade inside the post, so I don't want a different opt-in offer to overlay that, so I just add the no opt-in tag. And as you can tell, these are tags that are not made for my visitors. The idea is not that my visitor goes to the no opt-in tag page. Another thing that we use is we have top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel tags that simply identify kind of which segment of our audience is this post made of. And again, that's much more useful internally and for the team than it is for the visitor. Tags can also be used if you create series of content. So if you have a series of content where, instead of having everything in one blog post, maybe you have 5-part series, 5 different blog posts on the same topic, you give each of them the same tag. And that means you have one place to link to. If you tell people, click here to view the full series of posts, and it takes them to the tag list with exactly those posts in it. And finally, depending on what related post feature you use, if you use any, some related post widgets and features will also look through tags to determine the relation of posts with each other. In general, with tags, you can apply as many as you want. But the rule here is, first of all, also avoid orphans, because there's no point if every post you create has 100 tags and 90 of them are unique, then you're just completely diluting the structure of your website and you're basically just clogging up your database with stuff that you're not going to use. So even though it makes much more sense for tags to have multiple per post, you still want to be applying the same set of tags over and over again. If you have any tag that has only 1 post or 3 posts or something assigned to it, then you should probably get rid of it. And as I mentioned before, as a rule, do not display tags on the front end. Tags are not a useful navigation element. Tags are basically not useful for your visitors to find their way around the site. So use them internally for all the purposes I mentioned, but don't make them a navigation element. Now to round it off, let me show you an example of how I would structure the categories on a site. And I'll use my marketing blog Active Growth as an example for this. So if I was starting from scratch on my site, I would decide that there are basically 3 categories I want to have, okay, 3 large groups. The first would be everything about creating your own product. The second would be everything related to building your entrepreneurial skills, building your marketing skills, and so on. And the third would be about just tools and tech. So it would be like, maybe tools and reviews, or reviews and tutorials, or something like that. So for a site starting out, I'd be quite happy with 3 categories. I can start filling them up with my posts, and I would only worry about expanding that and having more categories as my site grows. What I ended up with currently, and remember this is for a site that has hundreds of posts, I have still these 3 main areas, but I added 3 categories to each. So I have a total of 9 categories that I use. In the creating your product idea, I have your killer product idea, create your product, and launch your product. So I have 3 aspects of creating your product. Then in the skills category, I have marketing skills, mindset, and level up your productivity. And then finally, in the tools and tech bucket, I have reviews, tutorials, and then a category called traffic and conversions. So as you can see, even on a blog with hundreds of posts, I didn't go and do 15 categories or something like that. I'm still keeping it quite tightly grouped together, and I have many instances of posts that don't perfectly fit one of those categories. Also, you can see that my category labeling isn't perfect. There aren't all desirable outcome action-oriented labels. And I wanted to show this example as well because it doesn't have to be perfect. And these categories have changed and evolved over time many, many times. It's something you don't have to get it exactly right the first time. I really recommend that you start small and build that up and improve it over time. I hope you found that useful guidance. Now, like I said in the beginning, there is a bonus that I put together for you, because if you already have a website, maybe you have a ton of tags, maybe you see that you have a lot of orphan categories, or maybe you've seen that your category labels aren't that great and you want to make some changes. Well, maybe you're wondering, how do I do that? How do I, merge categories together? How do I move posts from a category to another? How do I delete a category without losing my content? How do I change category labels and URLs without causing all kinds of 404 errors and losing all my link juice and all this kind of stuff? And that is exactly what my bonus video is about. So check out below this video, you can get this bonus that teaches you exactly how to move and merge and mix and match categories and tags without causing any errors or interruptions and without losing link juice. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and thanks for watching.